Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you may be joining us today. Thank you for attending today's presentation, FMCSA Clearinghouse and Employment Verification 2024 Updates. Today's webinar is hosted by Cisiv, a global provider of compliance-driven human capital and risk management solutions, and presented by Driver IQ, the transportation division of Cisiv, which provides comprehensive background check and employment verification solutions tailored for the trucking industry. This presentation has been pre-approved by both SHRM and HRCI for 1 hour of continuing education unit. This presentation is being recorded and we will email the recording and slides to everyone who registered in the coming days. Before we get started, I wanted to review a few housekeeping items. Due to the high volume of attendees, everyone will be muted to ensure the best experience. If you have any issues during the presentation, you can interact with us using the chat pane in Zoom. If you have any questions for our presenters, you may enter them in the Q&A tab, and we will try to address them at the end of the presentation. Also, please keep in mind this presentation is intended for informational purposes only. Neither this presentation nor the material presented during the webinar should be construed as legal advice. Thanks again for joining us today. Without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our speakers, Billy Lee, Amy Birkin, Chrissy Brockman, Liz Ogle, and Greg Conklin from Driver IQ.
Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, again, depending on where you are. My name is Billy Lee, and I am co-founder and currently Senior Strategic Advisor for Driver IQ. I've been around forever. I've been in the background screening industry longer than I'm ever going to admit. And we're really happy to have you here today and look forward to a good session, and hopefully you'll walk out with good information.
Welcome to everybody. Greg Conklin, Senior Director of Sales Business Development, really sales lead for Driver IQ. I've been with Driver IQ just about 8 years now, but trucking for a little over 30, and little secret, my dad actually owned a trucking company. So I think it's probably a little bit more than 30 years as well. I'm excited to be here with you today. I think that we've got some good things to share, some good content, some good speakers to go through. So looking forward to it. And thanks for joining us.
I'm Chrissy Brockman, the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Driver IQ. I will have been here 10 years in January. And just looking forward to sharing information with you today. I'll pass it on to Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Birkin. I'm the Director of Client Development here at Driver IQ. I've been here for about 9 years. My main objective here at Driver IQ is to work closely with the carriers and schools to obtain the data to grow the pre-database. So I'm happy to be here to talk about the pre-database and share a little bit of information with you. So I'll pass it to Liz.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Last but not least, my name is Liz Ogle. I've been with Driver IQ for 12 years, which in my math of dog years makes it 84 years. I am VP of Operations. Greg and I are the Wonder Twins, Sales and Operations, and we are looking forward to sharing time with you today. Thank you for your time and having a great discussion.
Thanks for being with us. We're excited about this session ahead, and we hope you do walk away with some valuable insights to help you thrive moving forward. So the agenda is pretty simple. Greg and Chrissy are going to kick it off with discussions around the FMCSA Clearinghouse, part 1 and part 2. Also going to talk about this interesting number, just updated number, that approximately 177,000 CDL drivers will be considered not qualified come the middle of next month. Could this affect your organization? Amy then will take the reins and talk about the employment verification process. That's a big topic. There's a lot of ways to do employment verifications. We're going to get into the weeds. And then Greg and Amy are going to talk about what's most compliant, effective, efficient. And Liz will be our wonderful Q&A facilitator all the way through this process. So with that, Chrissy, Greg, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you.
We're going to dive into the FMCSA Drug Alcohol Clearinghouse version 2. And Chrissy and I talked a little bit about this. We're going to do it a little bit as like our fireside chat, go through some question and answer as a way to help fill in some of the details about what's coming with the second clearinghouse rule here November 18th. First of all, though, I'll start out with Chrissy. I know you've been our Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse go-to really since day one. Can you tell us a little bit about Driver IQ history with the Drug Alcohol Clearinghouse?
Sure, be glad to. Let me remind people that before the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse was even an idea, really, Driver IQ was providing drug and alcohol information on our pre and single check reports. Driver IQ really knows drug and alcohol. Fast forward to the summer of 2019, Billy and I went down to Dallas to meet with the FMCSA folks, trying to get whatever information we could from them. We even offered to assist in any way we could, given our years of experience providing drug and alcohol results. That didn't happen like we liked it to, and we were still all flying blind, so to speak, but we knew we needed to staff up to deal with the unknown. So we hired 7 full-time employees and threw them into a conference room so that on January 6, 2020, we were ready to go. We were creating the process on the fly, and we needed to be quick on our feet and also be able to make changes as we learned about the process. It required patience from everyone, including our clients. As we chugged along, we were in very close contact with our customers who trust us to make the process as efficient as possible. So between 2020 and 2023, we were communicating, educating, advising our clients not only on the clearinghouse, but they also still need to reach out to get drug and alcohol results before there was 3 full years in the clearinghouse. So then the next milestone was January 6, 2023, when everyone was required to go to the clearinghouse and run their pre-employment and annual queries, rather than having to go to the individual carriers themselves. So today, we handle thousands of queries for our clients, both pre-employment and annual. We evolved, we learned, and we grew. The new Clearinghouse 2 final ruling is the next big step for the Clearinghouse, and we look forward to helping our clients navigate through that new process.
In the early days of the Clearinghouse, Chrissy, what were the types of things that you were assisting clients with, or what were the problems we were solving?
Much different than today. So early on, we were helping with the very basic things since the Clearinghouse was brand new and it was brand new to us. And so we all had to learn the new lingo. What is the CTPA? What's not prohibited mean? What's prohibited mean? Things like how to request us as a CTPA. Could they have more than one CTPA? What happened once they do request us? What's the process look like? The fact that you had to deposit funds and maintain them in the clearinghouse, that there were different plans, and all you can eat option, so to speak, and a per query option. We made changes to our reports so that when an employer was out of funds, we were able to tell them that. And so they would know that they had to reorder their queries. We also learned that funds were only held when drivers hadn't provided consent, and you were only charged once that consent was provided.
So it sounds like our clients came to us for guidance during that period and to help solve those problems. Do you have some other examples or some examples that you want to share?
Sure. What we learned is our clients all experience the same type of issues. We see it because we deal with all the clients over and over again because of the volume that we handle. We share our knowledge gained across the board with all of our clients. So it doesn't matter whether you're someone who has 5 trucks or do 5 queries a month or someone that does 5,000. Our process has evolved to automate a lot of things. And if there are required elements missing, for example, when you make a request, we let you know what's missing immediately rather than waiting for us to send it to query and crap out and return just a generic message. So we learned that the more information that we can provide, the better off it helps everybody. So we also learned things like some of the states will recognize the license with preceding zeros, but Georgia, for example, needs a 0 in front of the license for it to validate properly. So North Carolina may or may not need the 4 zeros. We know that you better not have dashes in the license, can't have any funky characters or spaces in the license because it will kick it out. So each time we learn, we make changes to our automated process, and we're in continuous improvement mode all the time.
I know, speaking of the continuous improvement, I know one enhancement that I know we made here pretty recently was something to do with the notification process to the drivers for consent. I think it was to improve our turnaround time, but can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Sure. We learned that when drivers registered in the clearinghouse, whenever that was, they may have used their email address that it was at the time, or they may not have provided an email address at all. So we made a change to allow for our clients to include the driver's current email address when they send us the query. And because we have their current email, as soon as we send the consent to the clearinghouse, we're kicking off an email notification to the driver saying you need to go respond to this query from this client. So we're sending it immediately. And then we send it again in 3 days, 7 days, 14 days. And then at 21 days, we actually cancel it out because we figure, and that's another thing, we can change that setting for people if you want it to be sooner than that. But we all know if drivers haven't consented in 21 days that they've either changed their mind, they're working for someone else already, or they're on to other things. So we don't want to leave you with queries hanging out there that won't be responded to.
I know another thing that you and I talked about, a story that a client who had a zero tolerance policy in regard to an SAP program and be able to return to work. And the question I think came from them as to how do they determine the details, or how does they see those former violations? And I think there's something unique in how we handle that.
Yeah, it was interesting because they said they see it in the clearinghouse, but they didn't see it when they looked at our result. But honestly, that one was easy because we do report back the current status, is driver prohibited or not prohibited, but then we also return all the details when there are open or closed violations. And we do that for 5 years, which is what is allowed in the clearinghouse. But that was a great reminder to us that even though we made that enhancement, we may not have communicated that very well out to all of our clients. It's important to review every report that we return that says see detail on it, because that when you see detail, you will also see driver prohibited or not prohibited, but you will see if it says see detail instead of clear, you need to go look at that report for additional information, because all of that former drug and alcohol information about the violation was on the report and the client just didn't know about it. So once he was able to go back and look at it, he was like, oh man, it's there. Thank you. So it allowed them to deal with their no tolerance policy better. So it was a win. We just assumed people knew.
And a good reminder, one thing that I would let everybody on the call know, as a client for Driver IQ, we understand that you have turnover in your staff, there are changes that go on, people get repurposed, all that type of stuff. And so we do offer ongoing training, to our clients. If you have turnover in your recruiting staff or your compliance team or processors or whatever, more than happy to set up a training with them, go through the reports that we return, the information that's in there. We really do want people to understand the information that we're supplying back to them. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
What else can you tell us about the new Clearinghouse 2 final ruling?
So we know that the second final rule goes into effect on November 18th. That's when the states will begin to remove or downgrade licenses when a driver is in the clearinghouse with a prohibited status. So the drivers are prohibited when they have open violations and have not completed their return to duty status. We also know there are over 177,000, we just updated that number, in the clearinghouse today with a prohibited status. So the Cliff Notes version is that the final rule, it's intended to keep our roads safe. And now that the states are required to query the clearinghouse before issuing, renewing, upgrading, or transferring either a CDL, and the same thing with CLPs. So it's basically connecting the dots now. The state agencies have the option to voluntarily query the clearinghouse and have before now. But the difference is, as of 11/18, it is a requirement. This is something that happened last year, frankly, but I just wanted to point it out. A change was made in March of 2023 that you would be notified if there was a change to the driver's record you had queried for a pre-employment or an annual query. They used to notify you only within 30 days, but effective March 2023, they increased that to a year. So what triggers the notification? New violations, remove violations, or updated return to duty status? The biggest thing is, one, do you know if you're getting clearinghouse email notifications? If you're not getting them, do you know who is receiving them, if anybody? And if no one knows, please log into the clearinghouse and update your profile so you get your notifications, because they are now sending them out by email. You just got to go put your email address in there and you'll get notifications. So Greg, I'm going to kick it back to you.
To highlight what Chrissy just talked about, which is you may have a driver that went and applied at another employer and failed a drug test at that employer and just stayed with you. When you run your annual query, you'll see that, but it might have been some time since you ran your annual query. And if you got that notice, but nobody paid attention to the notice, or the notice went to an email that nobody is no longer watching, then you may not have known that driver did fail a drug test and he's still driving for you. So that was really what prompted us to put together the webinar and to go through this process, make sure everybody was aware of these changes, and then to offer a solution. Solution is pretty simple. We can run a limited query for you. We can run it as a batch and make sure that your existing driver pool doesn't have anybody that's in a violated status or is unable to drive. We can do it as a one-time deal just prior to the November 18th, mainly so that we do a sweep across all your existing drivers, just to make sure you don't have somebody that's going to surprise you. And then going forward, of course, we want to help with pre-employment queries. We want to help with the annual limited queries. We can do these things in a batch process if that makes sense, if you're doing it in scale. If you think about how the process looks, we work with you on getting a current roster, and then we batch that roster through the FMCSA Drug Alcohol Clearinghouse query. Working with you on getting that current roster is something that we do with a lot of customers, something that we spend a lot of time on, something that we do free of charge. And it's really because roster management is really important to us. Obviously, we have Amy's going to talk about our previous record of employment database, our work history database that allows you to get that DOT compliant VOE instantly so that you can move on. Us managing the roster with you allows us to help you with limited queries, help you with the annual MVR queries, and also things like continuous MVR monitoring and continuous continuous criminal activity monitoring. So just understand that we're more than happy to play a role in roster management with you. We can do it in limited queries so that we can run a batch against your existing driver pool. But there are other things that we can do with that roster as well. And I know when we get into we'll talk a little bit about it. If you have an interest, if you have a concern, reach out to us following the seminar. We'll be more than happy to talk about what the batch process looks like. Pricing for us to run a batch, as it is a relatively nominal our fee to do it. And then most importantly, talk about how we get the roster from you and how we run the batch, give you back the results. Might open the door for us to also talk to you about some of the other things that we do once we're working with you to manage the roster. All right, that's how we can help on the FMCSA Drug Alcohol Clearinghouse 2 changes that are coming here really quick. We can run a limited query on the existing guys, make sure that you don't have anybody that's going to be in a prohibited status after November 18th.
So Driver IQ pre-employment database. Driver IQ is solely focused on the trucking industry and built by carriers to bring competitive edge to the market. So we are supported by 24 of the top 25 truckload carriers, and not to mention several other carriers who have chosen to store and maintain their records in Driver IQ. We operate as a consumer reporting agency, and we're subject to the FCRA. We follow compliance laws at federal and state and local levels. So partnering follows FMCSA, FCRA, and EEOC guidelines is so important to ensure receiving the correct info on applicants. This helps you protect you from hiring the wrong applicants or rejecting the right ones. Either way, using the wrong info can result in fines, class action lawsuits totaling millions of dollars.
When we get into the conversation about sharing BOE information, which is basically what our pre-database is designed to do, we're a network of trucking companies that have banded together to share that information, really so that it can speed the process, hiring process. But it is good to note that employers sharing this information with other employers, we see significant carve-outs in the past. that allow employers to share this information, even if there's potential that is considered derogatory or something like that. But as we got FCRA involved with Fair Credit Reporting Act, involved with the candidate and their ability to be hired, we saw that FCRA was actually starting to influence quite a bit the sharing of information between employers and those type of things. So as we started looking into it a little bit deeper, we really got the sense that the FCRA actually provides an extra layer of protection in this process for the employer that is sharing that information that potentially could be construed as derogatory by somebody else. Now, the FCRA giving that protection to the employer really meant that the employer probably is going to be better off sharing that information through a third party, most importantly through a CRA, because a lot of the guidelines under the FCRA, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, really are designed to tell a CRA, like Driver IQ, how to operate efficiently, and within the guidance that the FCRA is designed to give us. FAIR being the first word in that guidance. When we look at the FCRA protections just over what an employer can share with another employer, we see, like I said, that extra layer of protection. And I think the simplest way to put it is the right to rebuttal. You share information with a CRA. We share that information with the next employer. There's a challenge to that information by the applicant. This is really where the CRA plays the important role. That challenge would normally just go back to that prior employer, right? That employer has a choice. Do they make a change or not? But they've already passed that information on to the new employer. So if they do choose to make a change, there's maybe even potentially some admission of challenge in their information. Whereas working through a third party, through a CRA, that challenge of the information is a normal and natural process. We provide to the applicant the ability to challenge any of the information that is supplied out to that potential employer. And it's so that we can make sure that information is correct. So that if something was inaccurate from the former employer, so that former employer has the chance to correct it. Probably as simple as that. Something to consider. You do have the right to share information as an employer in the transportation industry to the next employer. You'll probably be afforded some additional protections working through a CRA. Driver IQ is a CRA specifically for transportation that is designed to house and pass this information to the next employer. Something to consider, since you have a requirement to pass this information, it almost goes so far as to say maybe you should work with a CRA to do it as well. And I'll back up something that Antique said right up front. Understand, the guidance that we give is not intended to be legal guidance. I would still highly recommend that you take this and the things that we cover that you would have questions to your labor attorney or to your FCRA attorney. I think if you talk to an FCRA attorney, they will probably back up what we're talking about in the extra layer of protection that you're afforded by working through a CRA when sharing this former employee information.
All right, so pre-details. So the purpose of the pre is to provide instant verification, speed up employment verification process. For Driver IQ, we provide the credit program that for every driver that is sold, not just a one-time. So we provide ongoing credits, not just a one-time credit. So we meet and exceed all FMCSA and FCRA requirements. We have the ability to pull reports and respond to FMCSA DOT audits. And then currently we have almost 400 carriers that contribute to the DIQ pre-database and adding to this weekly. As you look at this collage of logos, this is just some of the carriers that are storing data with Driver IQ. We really appreciate all the carriers that contribute and work with us to store data and keep their data updated. So this reflects growth of pre year over year. Currently we have a little over 5.3 million records in our database. Driver IQ database might not be the largest in the industry. However, it does consist of the largest carriers with the most active drivers turning in the industry, most accurate information compared to other databases, and it reduces the time and effort for employment verification.
And Amy, if I'm not wrong, I think there's over 1 million accident records in there too.
Yes, sir. So driving school records. So our purpose here is to provide a single source of secure training school graduate and attendant records. and provide more than just a list of students that graduated, and then provide a record of what happened during training, and then just an additional employment service record. Our progress to date is that we rolled out something in August of 2017, and then really it was to have the carrier's ability to access driving school records via the database for both Driver IQ clients and non-Driver IQ clients. Currently, we have over 161,000 driving school records within the database. We are actively participating in 2 leading training associations, the NAPF-TDS and the CBTA. Here's a list of all the driving school contributors today in the freeze. Currently, Roadmaster, AIT, Central Tech, NTPS, and Butler Tech all have SingleCheck sites so that Driver IQ handles all of their verifications on their behalf. This allows non-Driver IQ clients to have access to their verifications as well. The problem that we were trying to solve is that as carriers were having to trim down their driver experience requirements, they needed the ability to verify graduation records for their CDL drivers quickly and efficiently. Our solution was to create the ability for driving school records to store their attendance and/or graduation records in our database so carriers can access them instantly. The benefit for the school is they earn credits at the same rate as the term records. The credits can be used to offset Driver IQ fees for MVRs or additional products on future students. Some of the schools don't perform background screenings, so we have another option that will benefit them, and we'll work with them on a case-by-case basis. Schools also have the ability to pull reports to see what carriers are screening their students, which is very important to them, and they also have the ability to set up an automated report, which can be done daily, weekly, or monthly. So, SingleCheck employment verification. This is an online system that allows carriers or schools to store current and/or former employee or student info for a specific purpose of providing one-off verifications. This is easy to use and simple to set up. Some of the features include it supports both DOT and non-DOT employment verification. It's managed by the employer. We can update it in an automated fashion. The carrier or school controls who accesses it. We provide a customized link that can be placed on the carrier or school's website for easy use. We brand the site with a logo and customized text. You can run reports on the activity that is used through the site. Most importantly, and as Greg talked about earlier, the candidates do have the ability to initiate a dispute and rebuttal, and then carriers have the ability to get the verification free of charge. Currently today, we have 41 carriers and 5 schools set up with SingleCheck sites that we assist in handling their whole verification process. This is just a list of partners that we currently have integrated today. Obviously, you can see that it's a pretty hefty list. If you utilize any of those integrations, we have that capability to integrate with those partners. And then we have 3 that we are currently have on our list to future integrate with. That's in the process today. And then something that we're on the work today is that we've worked with 10th Street to build the capability to send termination records to Driver IQ through their system, and this enhancement will be rolling out in the next couple of weeks. So what is going on in the future is obviously we're continuing to focus on growing the pre-database, very important to us. So we'll be adding additional carriers and schools, focus on the new SingleCheck sites. And then we've also added additional staff to our sales team to continue focus on adding for-hire carriers, as well as expanding our focus on private fleets, LTL, and final miles. Liz, I think that brings us to you.
Okay. All right. We have a few questions here. So let me just start at the top here. If a terminated driver wants a copy of their employment record, can they get it from us, from Driver IQ? So good question. Yes, absolutely. We're a consumer reporting agency. If we have the record in our database, if someone's run the report, a consumer can always come in and ask for a copy of their own record. There is no charge for it. And then additionally, as a CRA, if is there information returned on the report that they believe is incorrect, then they can also use us to facilitate the reinvestigation and make sure that we get it completed within that 30-day time period. And in those instances, if it's a verification of employment, we'll reach out to the carrier that provided that record, provide the information on what was being disputed, and allow them act as the liaison to handle the dispute for them. Next question. The 60-day period for state-to-state changes. If someone applied for a new job the day after they fail a drug screen, does that mean it might not show on the MBR for 60 days? So the loaded question, It could, but there's been a lot going on in the last year plus in terms of state DMVs all moving to electronic state-to-state exchanges. And it's all in preparation of SIDless, and this ability for SIDless, along with specs, which is their goal to help keep unsafe drivers off the road and make sure people are aware. So it may not show on an MVR for 60 days, but with electronic exchange, it's more likely. And then to Chrissy's discussion, if you're running a query, if you've interviewed somebody, you're looking to bring them on board, and you run that query after you bring them on, the FMCSA query, you should see that there. Next one. What is the fastest and safest way to provide an employment verification to someone not a Driver IQ customer, and does it cost? So as Amy mentioned, our SingleCheck sites allow a company to set up a verification site, so someone can go to that site, enter the candidate information, and request a verification. There is no charge for that verification. And if a carrier, side comment, because I'm not sure if that was, but if a carrier wanted to set up a SingleCheck site, there's also not a charge for us to set that up for you. It's working closely with Amy, providing the details on what you want to report out, the time frame you want to report out, and getting the information to us so we can act on your behalf. But it is your record, and we can definitely handle that for you. Next question. What if drivers are having issues with the clearinghouse where they have addressed all issues and are still unable to run a limited query? So this is similar to what we see with SIDless, right? So I'll speak in general terms. If you're not able to get a match, there's usually a couple of reasons. Number one, did the driver enter their information correctly in the clearinghouse? Did they use the right name? Did they use the right driver's license number? Did they use the right state? Have they changed their information from when they first entered it, maybe in 2000? The other things are, again, I mentioned the state. One of the things that we do a lot at Driver IQ, and working in conjunction with Chrissy's team at FMCSA, is the SIDless report. So the Consumer Driver's License Information System. That is the best way to confirm what the current license is. If a driver's changed, then we will see that. We work closely with AMVA, SIDless, to ask questions, get clarification when we have clients that are not getting a match on an MVR, or they're not getting a match in the clearinghouse, to look and see what's going on. Are we seeing mismatches? Did he just change states yesterday? And so it may not have updated. So there's a number of things that you can do. I know that clearinghouse also has the ability to allow a driver to reach out and interact with them directly if they're still having problems. We do a lot of work on the front end and what we're seeing behind the scenes to provide information, but there should also be that ability for the driver to reach out to the clearinghouse and get help.
So Liz, let me ask you this, because this does happen, and so I want your take on it or your experience on it. So if we get a driver's license and then we run the SIDless and the SIDless matches, but often then we move forward and we run an MVR, and what we'll see on the MVR is their med cert has expired. And so when a med cert has expired, can you tell us what their avenue is to fix that? Because it does not validate in the clearinghouse with an expired med certification.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. Drivers say they've updated their med cert. Maybe they have a paper copy and they updated it 10 minutes ago and they're wondering why it's not showing.
Yeah.
So the states have 10 days to update that information. It's always good to ask driver, do you have a paper copy of that? You should have a paper copy. Whenever we have clients or even drivers that reach out, we'll provide them the information for the specific DMV and how to reach the MedCert division to update that. That is oftentimes that happens, and that can also be why they would not show on SIDless.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Let's see. I think this one was covered. I'll just hit on it real quick. Drivers that have completed SAP and they're listed as eligible to drive, there's a way to tell if they've completed the SAP. Chrissy, you talked about that. If someone's completed the SAP with substance abuse professional, they've completed that program, then when you run the full query, not the limited, but run the FMCSA full query, you're going to see information a little bit down the line on the report regarding past violations, positive drug tests, violations, if listed, should indicate, did the driver complete the required SAP program, and the return to duty and the follow-up. One-stop shop for the FMCSA to confirm that information. There's the next question, what about individuals who aren't required to have a med certification? So if you're not required to have, I'm not sure if that's in regards to the MBR question or to FMCSA, but if you're not required to have medical certification, then your position should be okay. I think that's really all the questions that we have.
Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to thank all our presenters for providing us with such an informative and timely presentation. If you have any questions about our background check solutions, you can scan the QR code on the screen right now to learn more about our screening solutions for trucking. As a reminder, we will share the SHRM and HRCI credit information, recording, and slides via email in the coming days. Thanks again for joining us and have a great rest of your day, everyone.